I understand. It makes sense. Thank you, Rarity. Of course, dear, Rarity returned, smiling as well as she pushed open the cellar door quietly with a hoof and stepped up into the house. Twilight followed close behind, looking around and taking in her surroundings. The first floor of the house looked to be one of classical decor, with artistically designed wooden cabinets and chairs in the living room. Pictures that hung on the walls showing the same man in different stages of her life or setting. Some featured her standing with trophies or ribbons, while others displayed her playing her cello with perfect stature, a closed eye, calm expression on her face. Her gray coat seemed to gleam as she poised for her pictures. Her purple treble clef of a cutie mark displayed perfectly for the shot. I heard she got out, Rarity whispered, breaking Twilight's train of thought and causing her to look over at the diva. She was staring at one of the pictures with a sad expression on her face, a hoof running down the glass that held the shot in place. I don't know if her mare friend made it out, but I believe in hoping so. I can only assume she did as well. Twilight nodded, following Rarity into the living room. 2 couches and a few reclining chairs, all surrounding an unlit fireplace. A large basket of apples resting on the coffee table in the center. It was here that Twilight had to suppress tears in her eyes as she caught sight of Spike and Katie sleeping next to one another in a chair. Katie was curled up into a tiny ball, her tiny chest rising and lowering in time with Spike, who rested on his back. Carrot Top was curled up in her own chair, cheek pressed against the cushioned armrest, drool leaking out of her mouth slightly. The only one awake was Big Macintosh, his flank resting on one of the couches. The workhorse looked like he had seen better days. His eyes were weary, filled with worry, but determination. Bandages were wrapped around his belly and side, as well as his front leg. He looked over as his right eye caught sight of the 2 men's. His voice, a deep whisper. Miss Sparkle? Twilight nodded, walking around Carrot Top's chair and taking a seat on the couch across from Macintosh. She took a moment to get settled before whispering, Katie's sleeping okay. How's Spike been? She's been fine, Macintosh answered, taking a quick look over towards the little ones. So has Spike. Been mighty worried about you, Miss Sparkle. Took a lot to keep the boy quiet. Have to say it took a lot of restraint to keep me from going over and collecting y'all myself. It's all right, Twilight whispered. I'm just glad you're there to let us in. Macintosh shrugged, looked over towards the fireplace. T'weren't nothing. You're a friend of the family, Miss Sparkle. It's my job to make sure y'all are safe and sound. Twilight smiled as Macintosh looked back over to her, smiling as well before whispering, You still tired? A little, yes, Twilight answered, drawing a nod out of the workhouse to watch Rarity hop into the last empty chair and curl up. You go ahead and get some sleep then. I'll wake you when the morning comes round. Macintosh spoke, looking back towards the fireplace with a blank expression on his face. Twilight nodded slowly, her tiredness starting to take hold again. She laid her head back on the soft cushion and stared up at the ceiling. She stared upwards for a while, long while, thinking about everything that had transpired over the last 2 months. What was she supposed to do now? All her research and notes were stuck back in the library. What was she supposed to do from here? Fade into the same continuous monotony that had nearly driven her batshit insane? What was she supposed to do? What did she expect to happen? How would she? Macintosh, Twilight whispered, looking over towards the stallion, who in turn looked back and whispered, "Yep." "Do you have any place in this house that gets any sunlight?" "Yep." Sleep was beautiful once again, and her mind free of nightmares and worry. It was like it was almost too good to be true. And then there was silence. Twilight opened her eyes, staring up at what she immediately knew could not be the ceiling of the house she was just in. Instead, the clouds and the blue of the sky met her gaze. She gasped, sitting up and looking around quickly, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "Hello?" she cried, getting to her hooves and looking about the fields she had found herself on. Her head darted to the left and to the right, taking in the sights of the ever-free forest in the distance and the town of Ponyville to her right. The town. Her gasp was loud as she beheld the yellowish shield covering the entire town of Ponyville, extending to the right towards what she knew was Sweetapple Acres. A large stone wall surrounded the entire perimeter, entrapped in the raging fire that billowed and roared inside. Ponyville was burning to the ground. "Rarity! Macintosh!" she cried, galloping towards the fiery town. "Spike! Katie! Somebody! Anybody!" Her cries started to turn to wails, tears slipping from her eyes. She continued to gallop towards the town until her hoof cut a rock, sending her tumbling forward onto the ground. She wept openly, her hooves covering her eyes, and her mind screaming that it couldn't be true. They couldn't all be dead. It wasn't until a savage growl from behind her made her slowly look up and turn her head, her eyes settling on. Her coat was soaked in blood, but she could still see the orange, a beautiful, dazzling orange that she had at some times, been jealous of. The firm legs, the right one savagely bitten into. Her Tristan was missing, showing off the entirety of her straw-colored hair. And those eyes, the eyes she had often marveled as the perfect color of emerald, were now a gleaming color of rubies. "Applejack," Twilight whispered, looking towards her ravaged friend, while Applejack stared right back. A look of rage etched upon her face. "Applejack, it's me. It's Twilight," she whimpered, watching as Applejack pawed at the ground in front of her, saliva and blood splittering from her lips and mouth. Before Twilight could say any more, Applejack bounded forward, launching herself at her at a speed that was almost alien. Twilight grunted as Applejack tackled her, and she did not resist. Why should she? Every pony she knew was dead, and it wasn't like there was help coming anyway. Perhaps the unknown void of death was better than this, better than the pain and misery that made up the remainder of what this world was. She only winced slightly as Applejack bit into her shoulder, pushing her on her back and tearing her teeth into the unicorn's flesh. Twilight had a calm expression on her face as she stared up into the clouds, hearing the snarling and growling of her once happy and peaceful friend as she drooled and bled into her wound, galloping off only moments later.